And I said, why should the chaplain only be there for bad events, for
Yes.
sad events? Let's have the chaplain involved in happy events. Having a baby is a happy event.
Hello, this is Tab Bartley, and you are listening to the Oath We Took podcast, the show that tells the Marine Corps story through the Marines that served. This is our 4th episode, and I am joined today by Michael Diamond. He is the reason for this podcast. I know so many amazing Marines who hesitate to tell their stories. Their stories hold so much power and so many life lessons. Oftentimes, though, they go untold. Not every Marine story is the same. What is the same is the oath that we all took. Today, I am honored to have Michael as my guest. We will be talking about his time in the Marine Corps and how he continues to serve Marines as the commandant of the Jack Maas Marine Corps League Detachment in Fredericksburg, Virginia. The first question I have for you is, why did you decide to join the Marine Corps?
Okay, I know this is going to sound really corny, but it's the truth that happened. Way back in my parents, they had one of those Time Life books, and it was a Time Life book of when JFK was assassinated. It was 4 days from the assassination till the burial. And I got really interested in it, and I read JFK's and heard his inauguration speech. And it was like, okay, this really affected me. I mean, what can you do for your country? I was a sophomore in high school, and I told my parents I was going to join the military. And they said, no. They took me down to the Air Force recruiter. Recruiter said, I can't talk to you. You're only a sophomore. I said, okay, can I at least get a bumper sticker? And he said, no, I can't give you one. I was like, wait, you can't give me a bumper sticker? Those things are cheap. Just give me one bumper sticker and I'll be back when I'm a junior. And he said, nope, can't do it. I said, okay, fine. Air Force, you're done. Talk to the Army. I said, nah, of course. Like I said, they had a bad reputation of not fulfilling their contracts. The Navy, I will admit, I came this close because I was actually a volunteer first aider, and I was going to become a corpsman. I was like, this is pretty cool. Completely forgot about the Navy, and the Marine Corps called me. And they asked if they can come to the house. I said, yeah, come on over. And I'm thinking, no, there's no way I'm joining the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps, they kicked the you-know-what out of you. And they came over. They weren't even in uniform because they were renovating their offices. So they came over in civilian attire. And just the way they carried themselves in civilian attire, I was like, okay, let me talk to these guys some more. And of course, I went to the office a few days later to talk to them. And of course, they said, we can give you a bonus to enlist. And of course, the amount of money they offered back in 19 that was a lot of money for a 17-year-old. And then of course they did the ultimate, well, we're going to have to get your parents to sign. And I was like, because my parents were anti-military. And I said, look, you're going to have to tell them that they're only signing for me to get a physical and a background investigation. That's it. And they said, well, we're not going to lie to your parents. I said, I didn't say anything about lying. Just withhold certain facts.
Just omit some of the things.
Yeah.
Just not all the things.
Exactly. And they said, okay, is that going to work? I said, look, if you want me to sign on the dotted line, you're going to have to do this because my parents won't sign. And he said, okay, well, let's give it a try. Worst thing that happens is we wait until you're 18. I said, yeah, exactly. They came to the house. He says, okay, Mr. and Miss Diamond, I need you to sign right here. My parents are like, well, what are we signing for? And he said, this is for Michael to get a background investigation and the physical. And they're like, oh, okay. And they just signed away. Well, of course, I come back from the MEPS and my parents asked me, so how'd it go? I said, Mom, Dad, you're looking at a future Marine. My parents, they blew up.
And how did your parents feel? Because you had a long career in the Marine Corps. How did your parents feel once you became a Marine, and then later on in your career? Because you went through a lot of things in your career, so I'm sure at different times they had different emotions about that. But did that change?
They were really proud to see me at Paris Island when I graduated. The night before graduation, and of course, graduation. They were really proud. Or at least they said they were really proud. My father, you could see, he was smiling. And of course, they didn't recognize me at all because I went into boot camp with a big old afro. And then they see me and it's like, no hair. So it was a real shock to their system. I know that. They were really proud, at least for the first couple of years. And then when I was on the fence about re-enlisting, I was in Hawaii at the time. My parents were like, get out of the Marine Corps, come home, go to college. You live here with us, you go to college. And I'm thinking, I've been on my own for over 3 years. Just living by Marine Corps rules, and as long as you play by the rules and you come and go as you please. It's like, do I really want to live with mom's rules again? And I had a great mentor, old Staff Sergeant Harris. I told him that I was on the fence, and he said, look, on the night you're not angry at the Marine Corps, and that's the most important thing. You cannot be angry. You take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. One column you label pro, the other con. The pros are staying in, the cons are staying in. And whichever list is longer, that's what you do.
And what great advice at the time to to take the emotions out of it, right? And to tell you to do it that way.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been trying to track the man down for years to thank him, and I still have never been able to find him. I don't know if he's still alive. I have no idea. But his advice, and that's what I did. Of course, my mother tried getting my then girlfriend, who will become my fiance, to become my wife. Tried to get her to talk me out of re-enlisting. And she said, no, I'm not going to do that. God bless her. And my mother's like, well, why not? And she goes, because I have a feeling he's going to propose. I'm going to marry him. And 10 years down the road, if he gets out, he's going to regret it. And then he's going to blame me. Not you, he's going to blame me. And I'm not going to do that.
And how amazing that she was so willing to support you, and knowing that whatever choice, that it needed to be your choice. And especially as a military spouse, and being young and not fully understanding even what that means. But obviously there's a great sacrifice for that if she's around it, she at least somewhat sees it and knows that she's also setting herself up for a sacrifice to support you in that dream.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in fact, because I had told her when we were getting ready to get married, I said, look, I'm going to stay in the Marine Corps until I stop having fun. When I stop having fun, then I will take off the uniform and hang it up. But as long as I'm having fun, I'm going to stick around. And she's like, okay, I'm there with you.
How amazing that is. And, so our relationship was very much made way after the Marine Corps for you, and not way after for me. But it's funny that you bring up the fun, because as you're the commandant of the Jack Maas Marine Corps League Detachment in Fredericksburg. And I will say that feels like something that's been very much embedded into that organization, is having fun, and not just one person having fun or one specific, Marine having fun. That it's, what can we do to facilitate fun across the board for all of the members, and what can we do variety wise? So what do you feel like you've brought from the Marine Corps to now leading an entire organization of people? What are some of the traits that you feel like the Marine Corps really prepared you or helped you for that role?
Well, of course, I mean, our leadership traits and leadership principles is the most important thing. But I believe, like you said, I believe in having fun. I believe in laughing. I don't believe in, okay, we have to do rah, 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 rah. No, because we all took off our uniforms, and the only way you're going to keep your members is you have to have fun. I mean, we initially all joined the Marine Corps League for the camaraderie. That's the very first and most important thing, is for that camaraderie. I mean, I joke around. I actually have to blame my mother from my brother from another mother, Ty. He's the one who basically twisted my arm and said, okay, you're going to join the Jack Maas Detachment. So
and what was your experience like with veteran organizations before, or maybe why hadn't you joined before? Because I know for me, and this, when I first got out I had a horrible experience with a veteran organization that instantly turned me off, but it just like it almost ruined all veteran organizations for me forever. And that's why like when you were reaching out and just the friendship you had developed, and as soon as you found we were moving here, it's like, hey, this is our next meeting, we invite you to come, no pressure to join. And how instrumental and like how important that is, because like you mentioned the camaraderie, like for me that is the most important thing that like veteran organizations need to be focusing on is those relationships, that support group, that community again, because I feel like so many of us miss that, and that it's really hard no matter where you are in the transition to find that community, to find that place that you can be, although you take your rank off, you can still be a Marine or you can be yourself. And so what kind of was your reasoning, or were you involved in other organizations? Like, how did you get there?
I mean, I never joined a VSO until my brother from another mother first got me into the VFW and then got me into the Marine Corps League, only because I went and visited a League detachment. This was years ago in upstate New York when I was on I&I duty. And they pretty much turned me off. It's like, okay, oh, you're a new guy. It's like there was no welcoming. And then I put it off. It's like, okay, I'm not joining that detachment. And then I wound up going to the Pentagon. And then after I retired, I saw another League detachment. I'm not going to mention their name, but again, it was another detachment of just sitting around drinking and smoking. Like, really? Is that all we do? I mean, I was really put off joining a VSO only because so many of them had the reputation that all they do is they sit around, drink, and smoke. Like, really? Is that it? I mean, at the time I was a smoker. I didn't mind having a beer or two, but
You didn't want that to be all you did, or like to always have to be away from your family too, when like you're away from your family so much in the Marine Corps. Like, is there ever a moment that like bring my family to something, right? Like, could we all like join in and experience something? I completely understand and see that. And I think that's your experiences with those has really like your interaction with individuals and with the detachment, where it's so welcoming, and that it's something that you reiterate so much, that we're welcoming. And I've been here a year now, so I've been a member a little over a year now. Yeah. And
yeah,
that was something that even still there's moments, and this is again my own perception or thinking it's going to be a certain way. We've had certain members throughout the months that I've been here, that there's been times that I'm worried how the rest of the detachment is going to interact, or how open and accepting are they going to be of these members. And then it's like they're open arms and they're like, come on in. And I have to like afterwards, like, wow, your perception of what you thought is just as wrong as thinking that they were going to like be that way. You know what I mean? But for that to be so instilled, I know that that's something that you've had a huge part in the organization, and specifically that detachment. And what are some of the challenges you faced as a commandant to make that the culture and to make that be what it is?
yeah. I mean, when I became commandant, there was a commandant before me who was never took off his drill instructor cover, and you could tell that he was a drill instructor, and that's all it was. And I noticed when he was commandant, members come in, and he just stood behind the podium from the time you got there until the time you left, and there was no real fun. It's like, okay, how about interacting? And I made it a point, and I try to make it a point every meeting. Yeah, I got business to take care of it as the commandant, but I also want the members to know, hey, I'm here for you. Of course, it's great we have a 100-year-old Marine, and I always make sure to talk to him. We now have a 94-year-old Korea Marine. I want to make sure that I talk to him as well. If anything, I want them all to feel welcome. I want them to feel, okay, let's have some fun. And I know it took a little while, especially as we call them some of the gray beards, not me, even though my beard is gray. But some of our gray beards, the ones who've been around forever, I know it took me a little while to win them over as well, but I'm stubborn. I mean, we call you Blunt Bartley, you can call me Stubborn Diamond.
It's such a great thing to be, especially when, as you know, a veteran organization, veterans are so diverse and they are coming from so many different eras. And so figuring out how to adjust your organization to support your local veterans and to be welcoming to all, I mean, that's a challenge. That's something that all veteran organizations are being challenged with and trying to figure out. And I think that you being willing to be stubborn, to try new things, and to lead using your personality, right? Not just something great about the Marine Corps is teaching us all these different ways to lead and these leadership traits. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's you, and you can't lead how someone else would. You have to lead how you know how to lead. And the organization, our detachment has tried a lot of different things. And I think that is really cool. And it's always when you try something else, it's first going to the detachment members and asking how they feel about it, or giving them a chance to have a choice. And why does that work? What is it about the detachment that works? Because again, you said, I mean, we have a 100-year-old Marine, a 96-year-old Marine, and then me, who's 32. And we have fun, and I love going to meetings just as much as they do. So how have you been able to kind of implement that change and enforce it? And what are some of the things that you've done in that process?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I believe in leadership by example. I mean, getting people to really have a good time, I need to be able to set that, and not just a fake enthusiasm. I need to be enthusiastic at all times. And that's why whenever I see anybody coming through the door before we have a meeting, and somebody especially I haven't seen in a long time, like we had a member last month, hadn't seen her in a long, long time. And you know me, I am welcoming of all Marines. We all earn the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. Doesn't matter if it was Parris Island or San Diego. We are all Marines.
But we do know real Marines are made of Parris Island.
Of course, absolutely.
Just joking.
I'm all for that. Of course, I have a lot of friends that went to San Diego. It's like, so you have to climb a mountain. Who cares? But try dealing with the sand fleas.
But sorry, I interrupted when you were talking about.
You're fine.
You had a member who hadn't been there in a while, and so you took the initiative.
Yeah, I took the initiative. It's like, okay, welcome aboard. Hey, haven't seen you in a long time. Hey, how you been doing? What you been up to? And then, of course, that was also a breakfast meeting. Thankfully, our auxiliary does a great breakfast. And again, it's all about having fun. It's that camaraderie that we're Marines. We're going to have fun, whether people like it or not.
And one of the things, because we keep talking about, so there's a monthly meeting every Saturday. And can you tell me a little bit about like that meeting and that setup, and then some of the other events the detachment is doing that's not the normal just sit here type meeting? I think it's really important, one, for other detachments to know that, yeah, you have these rules and regulations and these things we follow because we're Marines, but at the same time, you can adapt and you can do other things to support and to provide a great service for those veterans.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for example, we're going to be doing a fundraiser recruiting at the local mall. So that gives us a chance for people to see, okay, who are these people in the red hats? Who are the people in the red shirts? Some of the things that we do as a detachment were just for fun. Last year, you were heavily involved. Thank you for the Marine Day. That was huge. I mean, the first Marine Day, and I think we're going to have a much bigger crowd this time around.
And that was just a so our local minor league baseball team, the Fred Nats, that was literally just a, hey, come and enjoy a baseball game together. It was as simple as that. Like, we approached them as an organization saying, hey, we have this idea. How can we make it happen? Can we make it happen? And I think it had a great turnout. And then again, our 100-year-old Marine threw the first pitch, which was, I was lucky enough to be on the field and take photos of it, but it like instantly brought like tears to my eyes because it was such a beautiful moment. But is there effort to do those things? Yes, but it's not like an exorbitant amount of effort by any means. And there were members that, again, we hadn't seen and that hadn't come to other things, or even people that didn't know that there was a detachment there.
Exactly. And the funny thing was, I know you were taking pictures that day, like you said. I don't know if you heard what one of our members said to our 100-year-old when he says, "Well, I'm not sure how to throw this," and he says, "Well, just throw it like you're throwing a grenade."
And he knew, and then he knew how to throw it, and it was no issues. Yeah, that was probably the funniest moment from the day. What a moment to be able to experience. And I know for me, like, it's part of the reason why the transition was so hard is feeling like I've lost all of these relationships and these people that instantly I could rely on. And so being a member of a detachment and being able to just hang out and just talk and have adult conversations, or being able to bring my husband and my children to things like that. It's such a big thing. And I know there's quite a few events, and there's more events that you're planning and wanting to try. And so I'll continue to let us tell us kind of about those events, how you think of events, and the thought behind them.
I mean, of course, and what I was going to say is the great thing about Ralph, I really went outside the box. I said, you know what? His birthday's in June. Let's surprise him. Let's go to his house. And everybody's like, well, why? Why would you want to do that? And I said, look, he was turning 100 years old. How often do you turn 100 years old? Further, who doesn't enjoy having a surprise birthday on their birthday? And we walked in there. There was 20 some odd people, because we had Marines, some of the auxiliary, we had some from Young Marines, Lance Corporal Powers Detachment, all show up, and his face just lit up. I mean, he was like a 200-watt bulb, and he was in so much shock. And we had a good time just for a short period of time. And then, of course, everybody's like, well, what about for our meeting? I said, well, let's have 2 cakes. We'll have a cake for his birthday and one for the detachment on his birthday. And they're like, oh, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. And then, of course, like you said, bring your husband and your kids. Of course, we have the picnic that we do every September, which is a great time. And I want people to feel comfortable bringing their families. That's what this whole thing is. The Marine Corps is a family. We say that we're brothers and sisters. Well, yeah, we're a big family in the Marine Corps. And of course, this past Marine Corps birthday, I said, well, I want a guest speaker. And they're like, why? I said, because it's our birthday. Let's break the mold, have a meeting, cut a cake, hand out some awards, bye-bye. Well, how about we have somebody as a guest speaker? And then once we got one, a lieutenant general, retired lieutenant general, everybody's like, yeah, this is good. This is good. We had a big crowd. And then, of course, like, we all went to the Museum of the Marine Corps. Again, had a great time. Nice crowd for Saturday. Got everybody out of the weather. We had a group photo. We all went, ate lunch at Ton Tavern, and just had a good time. And that's the whole thing. I mean, I've thought about it, maybe sometime later this year, instead of having a stuffy meeting, that we sit and we watch We the Marines. Yes, I bought it. I have it on. I got it from my iTunes account. This is not an advertisement for iTunes, but I did buy it.
And I think bringing up those different events, and again, as a detachment, it didn't take a lot of effort to do these kind of different things. Yes, there was effort, and I'm not saying that, the officers didn't do anything, but I think sometimes we get in this mold of if it's outside of the norm, it's going to take so much extra work to do it. And that's just not always the case, or it's worth it. If it is some extra work, then it's worth it. And I think one of the things that you do very well as a leader too is when I first came on board, you created a position for me because you were like, hey, you have this skill set. We want to use it. we're making a marketing officer. And I think that just speaks volumes for the organization. And again, when we talk Marine Corps, we talked about adapting and overcoming. And I feel like a lot of times that's what veteran organizations don't do so well. They've stopped adapting. They're so in their ways. We need to do it this way. And it's like, think back to when you were a Marine and start adapting, like start adapting. And it's great to be part of an organization that is constantly adapting, constantly like, yeah, let's try this, or somebody wants to do something. Hey, let's utilize their skill sets that they can do. And I just think it is, I love the detachment, and I'm getting emotional now because at least for me, there was a time that I did not think I was going to find community again. And I did not think that I was going to be welcomed in that atmosphere or around, other people. And I found some veteran organizations that were welcoming, and I created some myself, but I missed Marines. And it's something that, like, if you're not a Marine, you probably don't understand that. I mean, a veteran is a veteran, and I totally get that, but there is just something about the bond with Marines and feeling. I had a period there where I felt like my service didn't matter and me being a Marine didn't matter, and my gender mattered more than me being a Marine. And that was not what my experience was in the Marine Corps. So then to find an organization like the Detachment that, again, is so welcoming. I feel like every time I go to a meeting, I talk to somebody new and have a conversation, like a real conversation, not just a, hey, how's your day? Like a legitimate conversation. And
of course, some of the other things that we do as Detachment, Memorial Day weekend, if the weather is good, we do the walk. It's less than a mile this way, especially for some of the older members. It's not too bad. And then we put our wreath out at the pavilion. I can't remember what the name is. I'm losing my mind here.
The monument thing.
Yeah, the monument.
The memorial.
For veterans. They're always saying, well, it's not a war memorial. They repeat that mantra every year. And then we do the same thing for Veterans Day. So it's real good. Again, it lets people know that we're out there. And the great thing, Memorial Day and for Veterans Day, you see more red shirts. We definitely outnumber the other veterans organizations. And we have a lot of veterans organizations in the area. But all the red shirts and the red covers, we're
what
there.
What do you think the Detachment does that kind of makes them stand out, or makes, like, for those type of events, are members more likely to participate or wanting to participate or even represent our organization while we're there? Because most of us are in multiple organizations. So what do you think it is about the organization, or maybe it's just because we're Marines?
Well, first and foremost, I can tell you, like you said, it's about Marines. My wife, bless her heart, she says when I come home from a meeting, she notices a difference in me right away. She says, my face is lit up, I'm happy, I'm smiling, I'm laughing. And when I say, I'm not, and this before I became commandant, said, I don't know if I want to go to a meeting. She wasn't feeling well at the time. She looked at me, she goes, get out. And she goes, go have fun. And she's told other people that I'm involved in the Marine Corps League, and she said, this is very important for Michael, being around Marines. And this is really good for him. It's good for his morale. It's good for us as a family. So I think that's the first and most important thing, is Marines, being around Marines. We are a family. We're a family of Marines. And again, I try to make it fun. I mean, I'm the type of person, when I make a mistake, I will admit I made a mistake. You've seen me do that.
Mm-hmm.
I have my little cheat sheet. I go down. I create my own cheat sheet before every meeting, and this way I don't forget things. Lo and behold, I forget things. And some of the other officers go, Michael, what about this? I was like, you're absolutely right. Let's go back. My fault. Let's fix this right now. And I think that's another thing that won me over, not only with all the officers, but those in attendance of the meetings. They're like, okay, Michael admits when he's wrong. He's not one of those like, "Right, I'm the commandant. I can never be wrong." No, I'm a human being. And I learned that from my troops. I mean, we all said when we were on active duty that we learn more, as much from our troops as our troops learn from us. And that's something I try to bring in. It's like, okay, I can learn just as well as anybody can learn from me. And
So with your leadership style and what you've been able to accomplish with the detachment, through COVID and all of that, what is some advice you would give to other commandants or other people who are in the lead position or leading roles in veteran organizations? What's some advice that you would give them, whether it's personally, professionally, or anything of that nature?
yeah, I mean, most important thing, like you said, COVID. I took over in the middle of COVID. I mean, that has to be the hardest thing for a VSO because you're trying to raise money, you're trying to recruit. And during COVID, now, I mean, we couldn't raise money. So we have to be very, very careful with our pennies. And then recruiting, I mean, people were like, well, I don't know, it's COVID. It's like, look, we'll wear masks, we will space ourselves. If you don't feel like coming, that's fine. But come on out, check us out. Well, if you're a little leery about COVID, you just let us know. We will maintain our space. But one of the most important things is communication. You have to stay in contact with your detachment. We do a great job with sending out the minutes. We do a great job with the newsletter. I've made it a point as commandant, before I became commandant, you didn't always see the commandant putting his input into the newsletter. I make it a point every single time we do a newsletter. I want to put some kind of input. It could be long. Of course, I get long-winded. Considering when I grew up, I was a shy kid, and I don't know. I guess the Marine Corps beat that out of me. I also was never a good writer in high school. Maybe it was my teachers. I don't know. But I actually enjoy writing my commentary into the newsletter. And to me, that's the first step of communication. Let people know what you're thinking. Let people, and I'm also commending people. It's like, hey, we're doing a great job. Hey, this is what we got coming up. This way there are no surprises. If you're maintaining communication, you're not surprising your members. You're going to get your members. I mean, this last meeting, of course, it was breakfast meeting. You feed them, they will come.
Especially Marines, especially
Yes.
Marines.
But this was the largest gathering we've had of Marines since I've been in the detachment. Now, I haven't been in the detachment that long. I've been in the detachment coming up on 4 years now. Geez, think about that. Less than 4 years and I'm commandant. It's like, okay. Yeah, I definitely stumbled into this one. But I think the communication is what's bringing the members in. And they're seeing, okay, we're having some fun here.
And I think it's also like you're very conscious of not overly communicating, or, hey, we've sent a lot of messages, let's wait for this, or this is important, so it does need to go now. And I do think that people very much appreciate you valuing their time too, and not just spamming their emails with every there's so much that could be constantly sent, right? And it's obviously a balancing act of not wanting them to miss information, but being conscious of not sending it too much so that when I send a message, people read it because it's of value to them, or I think that that's very important too, because you can over communicate to people, especially through email. And that's where utilizing social media and these other communications tools are very important for veteran organizations. Because again, you can communicate different things on different platforms, right? And there's a different level of communication or way to communicate. And so I do think that that's important too. You're not blasting them constantly with emails. It's like, this really does pertain to you. And I think that is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, prior to me becoming commandant, we weren't getting that communication via email. All of a sudden I became commandant. It's like, okay, I'm seeing the emails coming in from higher headquarters. Like, well, why weren't we getting this before? Was that because the higher headquarters wasn't passing it? or was it because our leadership wasn't passing? And again, I made your marketing position because it's like, okay, we need to be able to get the information out. I mean, I could fumble, stumble, stagger, and grope. That's what we used to call FSSG. What I think that's now MLG now. But we call it FSSG as a Fleet Service Support Group. We used to make fun of them. They were the red patchers and say, the fumble, stumble, stagger, and grope. I didn't want to do the Facebook and try to figure this out on the fly. Yeah, I can get into Facebook. I can do certain things. I'm on LinkedIn. I can do certain things. But that was the whole point. I mean, when you told me your background in the Marine Corps, it's like, and she did this for X number of years. She's a pro. and that was the whole reason when I created your position. I will admit, some people were like, well, why would you create that position? We need it. We need the position.
Yeah. And you got to try things to know, right? Like to know if they're going to work. Like again, I've said it way too many times today, probably, but like adapting and figuring out what works and what doesn't work for the detachment and just in general. And especially when you're looking to recruit, well, then where are these individuals that you're recruiting? And especially with COVID, if COVID taught us nothing, that we need to have additional forms of communication that isn't just face-to-face, which, I mean, yes, it's super important, but we have to figure out a way that if we lose contact, how are we going to continue that line of communication?
And that's exactly it. Speaking of if we lose contact, I mean, we put out an alpha roster every month or whenever there are changes. Thankfully, we have on Jim there. He does a great job keeping it up. But if we ever have another Snowmageddon,
I was going to bring that up.
If we have another Snowmageddon, I mean, for those who are watching, don't know what I'm talking about. Here in Virginia, you get a half an inch of snow, everything's shut down. Everybody loses their minds. Oh my God, it's fluffy white stuff falling from the sky. I mean, you're from Indiana. I'm from Jersey. I mean, I spent 3 years in upstate New York. My wife is from Vermont. We know what snow is. But my intent is that if we ever have another Snowmageddon, we break out that calling tree like we used to do when we were on active duty, just so we can check in. Each member calls 10 people. Hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? Just like I've reached out to you and other members. It's like, hey, I have a generator. If you can get through, if you do not have power, come on over.
Which I have to say how impactful that was, because so when Virginia had all that snow, I actually wasn't home. My husband was home with 3 of our children, and I had the baby in Indiana. Our neighborhood lost power and lost access to it. We didn't have power for 7 days, and they couldn't access, like, we didn't have phone service for 7 days either. And you immediately like reached out to me. Hey, do I need to find my way to them? Do I need to, like, what needs to be done to make sure they're okay? Because I had 0 contact with them and didn't know what was going on. And so having that roster and those type of situations and having it set up and being able even just to call somebody, that's something that I've said before that our chaplain does amazing. And I'll say this for any veteran organization listening. Your chaplain is supposed to serve anybody and everybody, no matter what their religion is. And you as a leader or a commandant or whatever, you need to make sure that your chaplain knows how to do that, because that's how it is in the Marine Corps, right? Chaplains yes, they have what they give their sermons in, but they learn how to support anybody spiritually and through it. And so if your chaplain isn't doing that, that is a huge turn away from members and people wanting to participate. And our chaplain does an astounding job of in his services, including everybody. And when he knows that there is, I mean, even I think I was sick one month and didn't make it to a meeting, and he sent a card with a beautiful prayer in it that was just like, it was just a beautiful prayer that anybody could have read and it would have had an impact. And that is something that is so important in these veteran organizations, because there's so much going on, right? No matter where you are in the transition and life happens. And to know that you have somebody that I didn't even have to ask for that support, right? Like I didn't even like, it was just automatically there. And so I guess this is my little just shout out to other veteran organizations, because ours does it so well and shows that it can completely be done. And the Marine Corps shows that it can completely be done. But that is a role that very much needs to be utilized. And I think is very important when we're looking at veteran organizations, that I can't think of other organizations that offer that and offer that in that way.
Exactly. In fact, I did something last year with our chaplain that nobody expected. We had a member whose wife gave birth, and I reached out to the chaplain. I said, "Get in contact with them, offer our congratulations, see if they need anything." And other members, they they perked up. Some of the officers, they perked up as like, you know what, that's a brilliant idea. And I said, why should the chaplain only be there for bad events, for
Yes.
sad events? Let's have the chaplain involved in happy events. Having a baby is a happy event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to figure out what everybody's strengths are. I don't believe in focusing on somebody's weaknesses. I used to get in trouble for that all the time from my staff NCOs and officers who said, why aren't you cracking down on this person's weaknesses? I said, why? I'm just going to work on their strengths. Let's build up their strengths. Find out what the strengths are. Let's build those up. And then the weaknesses will get smaller and smaller and smaller, where nobody will realize that they have a weakness.
And especially when we're talking about an organization that people have to want to be there. You can't make them come. You can't do these type of things. So to acknowledge people and their strengths and involve them. And again, why just the negative for certain situations, right? Like we don't need to dwell on that. You can participate in more aspects of the members' lives, and that you can be more than just a, hey, we see you on a Saturday meeting.
I think I was ahead of my time, because back in my day, it's like, oh, his wife had a baby, that's fine. Get him back to work. Get her back to work. And I was like, no, they just had a baby, or this person is sick. They had a death in the family. And they said, well, it wasn't an immediate family. I said, who cares? It's still a death in the family. And in fact, it was funny. I actually wrote a paper on when you go through the advanced course, FNCO Academy advanced course, you have to write a paper, a leadership paper. And you also do this in a non-resident course, the warfighting non-resident MCI course. And I wrote a paper basically saying that troop welfare and mission accomplishment have to go hand in hand. And boy, did I got slammed on that, only because, no, it's mission accomplishment, mission accomplishment, mission accomplishment. I said, well, if you're not taking care of your troops, then how is the mission going to get accomplished? If the mission gets accomplished, then you take care of your troops, everybody, the Marines are going to be happy. Believe it or not, Marines do get happy. But if they're happy accomplishing their mission, then everything is going to be copacetic.
And you've talked a lot about how your leadership and the things you learned in the Marine Corps have really like led what you're doing now as the commandant. And I think that the question, we have for everybody at the end of this podcast is, if you had to do it again, would you take that oath again?
And I know this is, again, going to sound corny, but in a heartbeat. Of course, just like any job, there are going to be down times. There are going to be times of like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I need to get out. No. It's like, no. Again, I think back to what Staff Sergeant Harris taught me. One day you're not mad, take your piece of paper. Pros of staying in, cons of staying in. Or pros of getting out, cons of getting out. Whichever way you want to look at it. And I've always made it a point to do that. And like I told my wife, yeah, I'm going to stay in as long as I'm having fun. I got to about the 17 and a half, 18-year mark. I still had plenty of time. My contract, I planned my contracts perfectly, so that at the end of my last contract, I had 20 years and 8 days. I mean, I planned everything out perfectly. And I got to about 17 and a half, 18 years. I looked at my wife, I said, you know what? I'm really not having as much fun as I used to. And I read the writing on the wall. I said, look, if I re-enlist, I'm going to be going to Okinawa again. And more than likely, I go to Okinawa again. I'm going to be heading over to Iraq or Afghanistan, because that's about the time it was happening. And unfortunately, I mean, I have my work at the Pentagon. I had a clearance, or still do, and I knew, and I said to my wife, they're going to assign me to continue working for some generals, and I don't want to do that. I want to lead troops. And my wife's like, okay, if you want to get out, I'm with you. You go ahead and retire. But looking back, yeah, if I had to do it all over again, in a heartbeat. I had so much fun.
And I think what's amazing, you talk about that, it was time to get out, even though you weren't right at the 20. In last week's episode, I interviewed Capers, and his thing was kind of the same. He was like, I knew that I wasn't, not that I didn't have this, he said, not that he didn't have the same love, but that the experience was just changing, and that he didn't want to become toxic to the Marine Corps because of how he was personally experiencing it, or his personal take on it. And I just think that that's such a cool thing to know and be aware of. And even though there's all this benefit to have, to go 20 or to go whatever pass, but to know that, like, not only is it better for me, but it's better for the Marine Corps, so that, because I can't give my best self anymore because I don't want to be here, or it's not fun anymore, to exit so gracefully. And I appreciate you telling your story, and we will have you on this podcast multiple times. And I also want to thank you for your friendship and what you do for the veteran community, because you do so much. And the atmosphere that you have set with the Jack Maas Marine Corps League it's how a veteran organization should be. And like you said, it's not perfect, but it's forever adapting and forever changing and forever figuring out the best way to be and the best way to serve. This is the Oath We Took podcast, and you just heard a piece of Michael's story. You now know one more Marine and one more piece of the Marine Corps history. His service matters. His story matters. Not every Marine's story is the same. We didn't all join the military for the same reason. What is the same is the oath that we all took, an oath that easily could have ended in death, and for some, it did. So listeners, instead of asking you to thank a veteran for their service, I am going to challenge you to continue to listen to their stories instead.